All right, we'll ask you guys to go ahead and take your seats, please. We're gonna get started. Thank you all so much for being here. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for coming to the TSI August Public Forum. I'm going to introduce the committee, and then I'll review today's agenda. My name is Casey Jane, and starting right next to me, we've got Coleman Crenshaw, Natalie Marola, Connor Eastman, Terrace Wyatt Jr., Caitlin Barron, and Ahafia Yurkowitz-Miles. I pronounced your name. Jerkowitz. Oh, dang it, I knew I was going to ask you that in advance. My bad. Okay, so today's forum will be 2 hours long. We'll take a 5-minute break in the middle, a little different from last time if you were here at our last one. We'll be moving along pretty quickly, so please refer to our online feedback form if we don't get to your question or comment in time. Again, there's lots of paper resources over there with QR codes, guides, things like that to help you today. Today we're going to be going over the abridged version of Section 2A, and there are 5 subsections to cover with 20 minutes of time allotted to each. We will read the entire abridged section aloud and then open it up for discussion. Please make sure you project loud and clear and only one speaker at a time. Please keep in mind the abridged guide will have more dense information than the PowerPoint presentation will, and the full version has even more dense info. We encourage you to refer to the Section 2A abridged version of the document, which is what's printed and available in a packet over there. Please note, the document may have small errors like typos, which should not be the focus of today's verbal feedback. Feel free to fill out an online form if you do catch small errors like that. Today's forum, let's go. Okay, today's forum will cover the audition process, rehearsal process, workplace safety, private/green rooms, and understudies/covers/swings. There may be a few minutes left at the end for additional questions. To ensure a respectful, inclusive, and productive environment for all participants, we ask that everyone follow these general rules during the forum. Use facilitators to ask questions, specifically Ahafia will be our moderator today, down at the end. Maintain a respectful atmosphere. Keep the forum free from personal complaints. Stay on schedule, and speak from personal experience. Thank you for contributing to a thoughtful and respectful discussion. Now I'm going to pass off to Natalie, who'll start us off with the audition process.
All right, audition process. Being transparent during the audition process is critical in establishing a relationship between the show's producers, director, stage manager, etc., and the cast crew that they hire. Goals: establish interpersonal respect in the process of hiring talent for your production by creating a culture of transparency, focus, and trust. Some of these tactics are: audition posting should be as clear and detailed as possible to what is needed. Time slots should be clearly presented and adhered to. Be transparent and understanding with regards to scheduling needs from your potential talent. Utilize the rule of 3. There should be never fewer than 3 people in the room at any time. If touching the talent is seen as necessary, consent is required before it may occur. The objective third party is critical. Any further auditions or callbacks must be negotiated with the talent and remain as public, professional as the initial audition. Outside of a request for headshots, resumes, prepared audition material, no other personal information should be asked for. Avoid giving inappropriate notes. This can include expressed opinions on physical appearance, questions about personal lifestyle choices, or comments of an aggressive or demeaning nature. Respect the artistry of your auditioning talent pool by honoring the promised time windows. Actions. One excellent third party to have in the audition space is your fight/intimacy choreographer.
All right, now that's the end of that section, so we can go ahead and open it up for discussion. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, anything that looks like it's missing.
As far as contracts, because I've had that before sometimes, people will come up with contracts, not necessarily they'll include stuff that they feel like they can, like, due to the comfort of the actors, they may not guarantee what they're going to specify, what they're going to ask for later, but because you signed a contract during the process.
Like having signed before you even auditioned?
Well, during the audition process, like, because you signed up for this when you came in, before we even get started, you said that you were comfortable with this because I wrote a vague contract, not necessarily legally binding one, but I wrote something in here that said you were comfortable with a certain amount of physical intimacy or a certain amount of like, I did a show in college where it's like we basically had to learn from quixotic, we were doing acrobatic stuff, and what it required was a lot more physical training and activity than necessarily you would expect for a regular show. And in the end, a lot of people were really physically exhausted. I ended up being hospitalized after that show just for how hard I was pushing myself for something I wasn't really getting paid for. So just like having a certain idea of maybe what the show was going to be, but not necessarily the requirements that were going to be in the show.
Well, that makes me think, I don't know how much that applies to the audition process necessarily, but in general, having something, because we're going to get to a few other sections here where that might be more applicable, but having something in here about contract language, because I do think that that can be a pretty snaky trap that people can trap you into, right? Yeah, that's a good note.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, can you remind me of your name?
Sorry, Chaz.
Chaz.
CHAS. That, and then I've done a pilot for a TV show where the co-director had a lot more in mind of what they wanted from people out of the show, so he had written kind of this when we were doing audition processes, there was a lot of things he was asking people that wasn't making clear to me what his intention was later on during the show, and later on what he wanted was a lot more than what we had discussed. So.
Yeah, contract language, that's good for us, I think, definitely.
Yeah. This is related to the request for headshots, resumes, prepared audition material. This could also probably be part of the first bullet. Audition posting should be clear and detailed. For those situations where someone is wanting to cast correctly. So, for example, Theater in Town recently did a show about disabilities. We asked that all actors have the disability that their character is portraying. We didn't say, do you have a disability? But we offered to share that information if they felt comfortable doing so. So things like that, or specific ethnicities, or religious backgrounds, things like that.
I have actually a question about that section as well, because headshots, resumes, prepared audition material, in terms of personal information, when we're getting into callback process, when we're getting into callback process, that is when we're maybe starting to ask about getting measurements for costuming and stuff like that. Do we need to make any sort of caveat that you guys feel for something like that? Because that would then push us past realm of personal information than just that straightforward.
Again, that seems like maybe something for the rehearsal process rather than
Are we considering callbacks part of rehearsals or part of auditions?
auditions. Okay, wait, so you're talking about getting measurements in callbacks. I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
I think having a personal.
I don't feel like that's.
I will say, this is something that in working on this document, I specifically put in because of a personal experience where I was told that I was known as a wholesome person and someone wanted, it was for a risque show and they wanted me to like take risque pictures to show that I could play the role. That is where this is specifically coming from.
Yep.
But it definitely extends to other things. Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't imagine getting asked for measurements and callbacks either.
I know, like,
Yes.
The reason I ask is because I have seen it happen
I'm
before,
sure.
so.
I know, like, for agencies, like I'm with Moxie, they have your measurements, and they send those out to people without you even auditioning.
Right.
But there's also that third party, it's that mediating, it's definitely more professional.
Right, and I'm assuming in a contract with that agent, that's part of the, that, like, we are going to send this information.
Yeah.
Any others? Yes, Taylor.
I know I said it a lot at the last meeting, I'm gonna say it again, there is nothing in here about technical or anything like that. I think this should be opened up to audition/interview process.
Agreed.
And start opening up for stage management, technical, crew, all of that.
Yeah, I was, because that was my first note I got on here, is we need a crew parallel to this, right? And I wonder too, if we have an audition process section and a through hiring section.
Yeah.
Because I think that there are gonna be things that on your and my side of the table that we need to address that are different than this.
We have that workforce safety section, and but that's like one of our most anemic sections. I think that could easily become that, or incorporate all that, and we can move it.
And I believe that it's towards the end of the document, and for someone who works specifically on technical side only, to then go through the entire document, it almost feels like an afterthought of what my positions typically are. So by putting it in earlier of the entire process would be beneficial.
Especially because if we're working on production team, you tend to start significantly earlier than the actors. So having it in sort of chronological order of a production makes the most sense to me.
And our positions tend to also involve auditions as well.
Yes. Yeah. Making sure that's part of taken care of.
Hey. Comments of an aggressive or demeaning nature, it seems really clear to us who have been on the receiving end of aggressive or demeaning natured comments, but those who are giving them are not, I mean, racists won't say they're racist, they're like, no, I was complimenting your body, it was.
I was wondering about that too. I think maybe clear examples, so for people who perhaps are unaware of how the things that they are saying are coming across.
Hey, you've lost weight.
Right.
Most people are going to be, that's a compliment. It's like,
Yes.
you have no idea.
Yep.
That's a good note.
Any other things? Yes, remind me of your name one more time.
Phil
Phil,
Keenan.
thank you.
Guys, there should never be fewer than 3 people in the room. Is that 3 people and the auditioner, or does the auditioner include the 3?
2 plus the auditioner. Yeah. So it's never a one-on-one situation. That's what we want to avoid.
I think that should be made a bit clearer.
Okay.
I think it is in the larger document, the non-original one.
Maybe, yeah. It gets mentioned a few times, I know that.
There was like a minute where it kept coming up, and we were like, we should call this something.
Oh,
And then
yes,
we
yeah.
kind of went back to and did rule 3.
Yeah, we do have that specified within the larger document. Yes, Phil.
My second inquiry here is that outside of a request for headshots, resumes, or audition material, the personal information should be asked for. So they should be filling out an information sheet that we, the artistic staff of the show, made out to make sure that we have each and every bit that we need to cast appropriately, because you would say, well, that's probably all on the resume. Well, if you look at every last single resume, 34, nothing is consistent. And there is information that I might need that's been left off.
Like what?
Hi, no, you're welcome.
The voice range, if you have a vehicle, special talents, your dance experience.
Those are all things yeah, Taylor.
I don't feel like those are necessarily the personal information this document's talking about. I think it's talking more about like, what are your measurements? What has your sexual experience been? What is your sexual orientation? It's asking more of those personal questions that you may not necessarily want to tell everyone in the room about, but your experience in performing and technical and stuff, I feel those are definitely things that should be on, but aren't the like personal information kind of things.
Does it need to be clarified to say like intimate?
Sure.
Intimate, personal, yeah. And another thing I will say, you mentioned access to a vehicle, Phil. I'm pretty sure and I need to double check this, for the state of Missouri, I think for hiring, you're not technically able to ask about access to a vehicle. I'll double check that.
That's interesting.
Okay.
That is just something I know from other jobs that I have.
My addendum to that is that I had an actor who took the bus, he didn't have a vehicle, I wanted to know that ahead of time so that I could build into his salary, money to buy the passes to get to rehearsal.
Absolutely, and I wonder if that's something that, I don't know, that might be something you communicate after,
It could be.
after hiring, yeah.
So
Because
like
then making
contracts,
space for that and making sure everyone's able to access, 'cause
That-
that's,
Usually comes into obligations
Yeah.
later on.
There was something else that I was gonna say about that. Oh, okay, so we had talked about intimate personal information. Does that wording feel comfortable for everybody? Do we need to make it even more precise?
Yeah, we should maybe include selfies, like asking for personal photographs is an automatic questionable thing.
Yeah, personally, I don't think we even need intimate.
Okay.
I think people understand, hopefully, what personal means. I mean, not everybody has the same understanding about everything, but personal more generally, I think can be interpreted to say, obviously, intimate things, but also non-professional photographs.
Yeah.
Because basically what we're trying to say is anything that is not pertinent to the professional experience you're about to have, which is to say your dance experience, your professional headshot, your range, some of those things.
Yeah.
That's professional information. Personal information may be photographs, but also intimate sexual history, things like that. I think being more general about personal is probably the way to go, because then we're not making a distinction between personal information and intimate information.
Well, and I wonder too if we put it as no other personal information should be asked for, and then in parents, and non-professional information would be any information that is not pertinent to the hiring process for this show.
And again, we can give examples. It sounds like this is one that we just need to clarify a little bit more, even though we all kind of understand what we're talking about. But again, going back to the point of not everyone's going to interpret things the same way.
Right.
So we need to make sure whatever personal information means, that it's very clear, this is an example that's okay, this is an example that's not okay.
One more question about that. Can you put on the audition form, this production of this play requires nudity?
Yes,
That's totally fine.
Yeah,
That'd be part of the audition material.
That's more like warning them. That's,
And I think in general, that's the rule, right? And
Yeah.
that's what we're saying. Audition posting should be detailed. So instead of asking someone, do you do this? Do you look like this? Do you have a disability? Any of these things, it is to say, this production will contain X. And then they can self-select whether they fit that category or they're comfortable with that, rather than asking them, you know, are you okay with a nude scene? Know that this character has a nude scene.
and then it would be weird to ask them for nude pictures. Like you said, you were fine with it, so let's also check your cup size or whatever.
And then just one more comment, I'll be quiet for 2 minutes. When we were talking about the audition process and then for like tech folks, the interview process, and then somebody mentioned this stage manager. I as a director have been interviewed many times for a position that should also apply to the director.
Sure.
The only person I know of in the hierarchy that doesn't really get hired is the producer.
So the producer is the only one who doesn't need to be like vetted or asked to do a job, right?
Or the owner of the
Sometimes they really
venue.
should be.
If it's a big established place, then whoever runs it
Yep.
doesn't have to.
I just want to emphasize that I liked Pullman's wording of
Self-select.
self-selection.
Self-selection.
I think using that more in this section could be helpful to what should be asked versus what can be offered.
Okay, so, I'm sorry.
No, please, Tara. Yeah, I'm gonna try to be better about, like, if you guys can raise your hand and I'll just say this person, this person, this person.
Okay, so at school, different circumstances, but on the audition form, I generally ask, because it's school and it's my school, like, what are your pronouns? And are you comfortable playing a character of a different gender of identity than you? And then I'll ask, is there anything else that I should be aware of?
Yeah.
That,
Self-selected.
Yeah, that's
They are
pretty
choosing to
yeah.
tell you, I love that.
Okay, I think that's a great process. And I think also for pronouns and comfort with portrayal of genders, I think that is, again, another option for people to self-select the information they want to provide.
Is that right off the start too? Like one of the first things you said?
that's my audition form.
Okay.
What's your name, your email address, and I'm talking about like 8th graders.
Right.
so.
Yeah.
But I think for adults too,
Yeah.
that's very helpful to have.
Yeah. Do they have to have a certain grade point?
Coleman?
Two things. One from Zoom, which I'll get to. The other thing I would say, Tara, which might be useful in the context of an audition form where you are asking some things like that, is a disclaimer at the top that says this is a voluntary section.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have to fill it out. It's not going to have any basis on whether you get cast or not. You know, we're not going to discriminate against you because you're not willing to play this or you are willing to play this.
I actually do put, your answer will not
Perfect. I mean, I think
affect whether
that's a
you're
good
cast.
thing a good policy to always have for some of those things that are not germane to the role.
Yeah.
Like, it's important that you have this range because that's what you're going to have to sing. So I do need to know that. But some of these other things, always okay to have a voluntary section and make it clear that it's voluntary. And then Kevin asked a question on Zoom. So I'm just going to read it out. I think describing sexual orientation as intimate is problematic because many people don't consider sexual orientation in the realm of sex. Many people wouldn't think about asking someone if they're straight as intimate. So to consider the idea of asking for sexual orientation as intimate can be othering.
Yes. I think that's a very good point.
Well met.
Well met, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Howdy, my name's Marley, and I'm just learning the process. I'm excited to learn. With the point of like voluntary, it would be nice also to include confidentiality as well.
Yes.
As well as, I don't know if anyone utilizes online platforms, but there's been like people who have auditioned, sent in information, and then that data can then be scraped or used in other places. So it can even go as far to like say, if we don't go forward, we'll delete or remove your data from our database and have those internal things for safety as well, specifically on gender expression and identity and things.
Right. Which especially right now is very top of mind for.
Yeah.
Tara, I was going to ask if you would be willing to send in the form you used to us so that we could look at it and, because we have some templates in the back as well and integrating some of that language to do also.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've got just a few more minutes in this section. Is there anything else that we want to cover?
Yes.
Also from Kevin, from Zoom. Also asking for voluntary information, which is what WIN, Kevin's production company, does, can be helpful in monitoring DEI outreach. Quote, how many minorities are coming to our auditions, end quote. So asking for voluntary disclosures can be very useful and informative.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking something like theater companies will send out like anonymous like links where it's like, hey, like how did you enjoy the show? Like give us anonymous feedback, and that will usually have like demographic information. So that would be, maybe you can send out like, thank you for coming to audition for us. How was your experience? Can you give us this information?
I'm making notes
Getting
here.
active feedback on the audition process. Yeah, that's a good idea. Taylor.
Pointing out from Kevin's
Okay,
comment about
totally.
asking for certain demographics, equity does not allow those questions, whether voluntarily or involuntarily. There are certain questions that cannot be asked.
Thank you.
On paper at least. So just as a general to the board, there are some things that cannot be asked, and racial identity
So we may ask you more about your knowledge of that further down the line. That's good.
Roll a deep one.
We have 2 minutes, just so you know.
And then I have a question about that, Taylor, especially because of the city that we live in, we have a significant amount of non-equity houses, right? In that case, there's going to be a lot of non-ec houses that are applying for grants that do utilize demographics info for that. And so I'm wondering, especially because you've been working in ec houses for a long time now, if there is a way to have those things live side by side while also being different from each other. Do you think that that's possible in your experience?
In some cases, yes, in some cases, no. Because I look at both ec and non-ec on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I have 2 databases with different information on them based on that. And so within that there are, because prior to a certain year, we could ask that question.
Sure.
However, at a certain point, because how the equity process works is the union house has to submit all information, including the audition sheet, to equity and get approval within 10 days of the auditions and everything. And so from there, that is when we learned that we are no longer allowed to ask those questions.
Gotcha.
I believe one of them at one point, and I have to go back to my email to check, I think one of them was even pronouns. At one point was taken away.
Okay.
We can now ask that one again.
Okay.
But like it changes year by year, a lot of the time. So sometimes yes, sometimes no. It kind of depends on where they're at. And also with us being in Kansas City versus one of the big 3, we have a little bit more lenience as well.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
All right, folks, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next section. Thank you so much for all that discourse. We're going to go on to rehearsal process, which will be read by Connor.
All right, section 7, rehearsal process safety. Creating an atmosphere that prioritizes safety for all, above all, is crucial to respecting the integrity of the art and the artists. Our goal there, it is critical that everyone involved feels safe and comfortable, both in the space and around their coworkers. Some tactics throughout. Create familiarity with any rehearsal spaces used throughout the production process. Not just initial space, but the space you move to if you're doing that. Familiarize yourself and your cast and crew with any quirks the space may have. Walkthrough should be done with all new spaces upon first contact. Check in with talents and it would be also crew's physical and mental states before starting any intense rehearsals. Decide as an ensemble what check-in looks like, if it's physical, mental, etc. Define your boundaries. Plan in advance for any intimate or stage combat work that needs to be done. Should never do that out of pocket. Keep in communication with all parties involved in production throughout. Ideally, there would be a minimum 24-hour window to update cast and crew. This is in case of emergencies or unexpected events. Establish what the general flow of rehearsals will be. We recommend the industry standard of 5-minute breaks every 55 minutes or 10-minute breaks every 80 minutes. Keep rehearsal periods within what you have promised for the talent. Pay attention to actors' needs when they're performing physical work. Encourage work-life balance for all and keep rehearsals within the promised time limit. Keep communications public and transparent. Do not solicit private rehearsals or private time with anyone as a director/producer to an actor/technician. And make breaks consistent. And then just a couple actions for that one. Walk through all new spaces, showing entrances and exits, where bathrooms are located, where water is located, where the performing area is located, etc. Make sure all travel and workspaces are clear prior to rehearsal starting, and designate an area for the talent to put their bags when they enter the space, which could be the green room.
Cool. I have something that I want to throw out first. We have here keep rehearsal periods within what you have promised for the talent and encourage work-life balance and keep rehearsals within the promised time. Those are 2 things that actors on the regular get a rehearsal schedule that is for the most part adhered to. Crew is very rarely given that at all. We are often expected to work late on our own time. We're often expected to arrive significantly early to do things just because they need to be done. And I wonder if there is a way that we start with a rehearsal process document that has a section for cast and a section for crew so that we can address both of those things. Whether it is a section for like, okay, tech week, hours typically are going to run long for crew. We need to have a maximum hours that you can perhaps work during a day of that time so that there's actual, because I mean, you know, I can't tell you how many productions where it's like, okay, well, lighting stayed until 2 a.m. And then they got up and then they came back at 9 a.m. and they started again. That's unsafe. It's unfair to their physical and mental well-being. So making sure that we have expectations for them as well within this document, I think would be really important. And then making sure that there is someone that, I think we talked about last time, of having a actor's deputy and a crew deputy that makes sure that each group, it has someone that they can go to if those things are not being respected. Yes, no, maybe so?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Time, yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
Yes.
having been on the technical side too, there is a specific children's theater I've worked with where it is a lot of times the stage time overlaps with the actor's time because the space is shared.
Yes.
And so that often comes up a lot where the technical side runs out of time to work on the production. So I don't know if there just needs to be a better definition of pre-scheduling as far as the rehearsal space goes.
Well, and along with that too, I think that we have an expectation, at least here, I can't speak to other cities, but that production time is like the 2 weeks before you open. And so you're cramming everything significantly into those 2 weeks. And so maybe trying to find a way to encourage pacing it out so that it is not so last minute and thus so overtime, or putting some sort of stipulation that says we know that overtime will be something that happens during those weeks and pay will be commensurate with that so that there is an increase for the just sheer amount of time that you have.
Yes.
Taylor,
Stephanie went first.
fantastic, Stephanie.
Yes.
You got it.
I agree. I think the challenge with that, specifically thinking of community theaters that use rented spaces.
Absolutely.
For example, I know the barn only gets the week of opening to be in the space.
Which is maybe why we include a stipulation of like, we know hours will be long and here is your
So, just being very clear about what that looks like, I think would be helpful.
I think they're within this, in the terms of talking about specifically crew, there should be some helpful suggestions in terms of this, of having staggered calls. So like there is team A of lighting and team B of lighting, where at some point you have like an hour or 2 hour overlap. So then you do have where it's rest time in between.
Yeah.
I also know at Santa Fe Opera, the interns have a minimum of a 10-hour turnaround between end of call to next call the next day.
Yeah.
And their stage management team, at least a while ago, it was a minimum of a 8-hour downtime turnaround. And I think having those suggestions in there may help in terms of scheduling like that, such as with actors of there has to be a 12-hour turnaround. There must be this time of turnaround. I think there's just, again, that bridge that needs to just be helpful suggestions of how to maintain this.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Phil?
Team A, team B, there's a leader for each one.
I think
It's like, I'm thinking like the hang,
Yeah.
for instance.
I think that depends on the circumstances of everything else going on. I know that a lot of times in the specific community setting, a lot of times you also have your sound designer helping hang lights and that kind of thing, where there should always be 2 people. As especially when there are ladders involved. But alongside that, I think there is a way to work around it where maybe it is a team of 4 and you split them up where it is a staggered call and so they hand off. And so whoever was there first and is staying into part of the second shift, they then take over the lead as the second shift. And then you have third person come in, so everyone's only working 5 hours at a time.
Yeah.
But it's all staggered in a way.
You mean like how normal workplaces work?
Yeah.
But I think there is a process there that works for every theater. It is just a suggestion as to
Yeah,
a potential solution.
you know, like, for instance, the lighting designer at Theater in the Park has set hours. That's usually about 8:45 in the evening until 6 in the morning.
Right.
That's what they have to work with.
Yeah.
You know, they just can't switch it off. You know, and I grew up on a huge, huge farm, and I'm just of the ilk that when it came time for wheat harvest, we didn't have 8-hour days or anything like that. We knew what was involved. The entire community did. And trying to equalize the amount of time that a crew member or a designer spends at the theater or on stage is equal to what an actor or anybody, I think that's asking way, way too much. I totally agree about being well rested.
I guess I wonder why it can't be the same. Because like I think the only reason we see it as being this way is because that's how it's been. I think there's no reason to say that we can't have expectations for, hey, you worked this long, now is your time to actually have like your own life again. I don't know, I think it's gonna take time to change that way of thinking. Really quickly, then is it okay if I go to Coleman? Yes.
But we all know the stage manager arrives first,
Sure.
and they are the last to leave. They are the longest.
But I wonder if I think what we're saying is perhaps it shouldn't continue to be like that. Because we know how hard stage managers work, and I also know that there comes a certain point in the process where I can feel their sanity start to fray a little bit. And I don't want that for them. I want them to be able to actually have grounded, balanced time to recoup and rest. Coleman?
Yeah, 2 things about that, I think. You know, wheat harvest happens once or twice a year. Unfortunately, that's not how the theater these days works anymore. We have technicians that work on multiple shows and, you know, crew that may jump from here to here to here. So I think expecting it to be a cyclical thing like a harvest is probably not the best equivalency. As far as the stage manager being there first and last, it's, I think, a good analogy there is probably the weakest link in a chain, which is, weak is the wrong word there, but planning your schedules around who's gonna be there the longest is probably the key. If that means that actors don't get the full rehearsal because we have to only give the full rehearsal to the stage manager, so be it. As long as you understand you're scheduling around that, you're scheduling around the person with the longest schedule.
But if we go then with Taylor's idea of A and B shift,
Sure.
we have some sort of like SN type position where there is a guaranteed time for the other to swap off and take over, like, chats.
I would guess, it seems like the overall broad discussion that's happening is, well, this is specifically since we are Kansas City and Midwest theater, that we're having to adjust our standards to the fact we are a smaller budget theater. And that includes whether we can afford the hours that we have. A lot of these people, like you were saying, point of order, that people are gonna have multiple jobs, most likely. So how are we adjusting as far as schedules, as far as tech crew, if they're gonna have to be working another job, or if they're gonna be working multiple jobs in the same production? And so I'm trying to provide a context of it, but it seems like we can't define ourselves by everything on the coast. We are gonna have the specificity that's gonna be coming from this is gonna be coming from the fact that Midwest Theater is gonna have a few different stipulations that we can't be on average on as far as equity payment, that comes up a lot too, where it's like equity versus non-equity, because we're paying the union rates and everything else that people can pay on the coast as opposed to what we can pay here, and how many we can hire even, like the amount of actors we can hire, the amount of equity crew we can hire. That's just gonna be a part of maybe a finer detailed discussion as far as parameters go.
Stephanie?
I think just from what we have talked about so far, a lot of it boils down to whether it's specific hours or rest times or shifts or whatever, it's about the expectation of work. And versus like what is agreed to, and finding a way to make sure that technicians are not being taken advantage of, and actors not taken, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, because that is always how it is that the assumption of extra work that you're gonna be doing.
Exactly.
And that does apply to everybody.
Yeah.
But then that's exactly where you run into trouble. That's how corruption can get in there, is because, and I think, just speaking from the actor side of it and the creative side of it, if you're really invested, if you want this project to happen, then you will put in more work than what is asked of you, just naturally. And I think that's a very human and natural impulse for people. The trickiness is, how do you keep that from being exploited by someone else?
And for people who are really passionate about a project, understanding that they aren't necessarily the rule. Because I think sometimes there's a project happening that director, producer, whoever is really invested in, they put a lot of time in, so then there's an expectation that others will put in the same amount of work, but without that being communicated to the people.
Yeah, I think that's something that I have a few rhetorical points for the document, but I think to start, one of the thoughts that I had was like, keep rehearsal periods within what you had promised for the talent, and then the 2 down, encourage work-life balance. I think that the work-life balance gets more to the core point of this conversation of like the expectation of things, so leaning into that would be really good. I don't also know foundationally how different those 2 lines are, so having a combination of that line to make it clearer, and then also to that point, having a thing about boundaries, and then something to the effect of, in leadership, the job also is to tell people to stop sometimes. So as much as it's about like enforcing and like feeling empowered in your own boundaries, it's also a part of a leadership style that like is making sure that rest or life is actually valued. So I think like leaning into that work-life balance could be really valuable in that section, and then having a little bit expanded conversation of boundary work, and then how to respect boundaries, negotiate boundaries, empower boundaries coming up could be really helpful there as well. And then I have a few other rhetorical things, but that was like a main thing that we were all talking about, so I didn't want to derail it. But
That's great.
We have
Well,
about 3 minutes left for this section, just putting that out there.
Okay, I would love to hear your other points on there, Taylor. Okay, if we do that, then I can pass over to you.
Yeah, I have a feeling they might be similar points.
Oh,
Fantastic.
Oh, okay, well, the plan in advance for any intimate stage combat work that needs to be done, something to the effect of also have prepared and trained staff on standby. So if you have an intimacy director or like combat, there's probably somebody who's doing that part.
Yes.
And then for the bottom part, showing entrances and exits, also something about alternatives. Just thinking of access, so if there's like a ramp section or an elevator, who has the elevator key, that could all be really important for access. And then also like work-life balance and boundaries. We talk about breaks, we don't talk about food. We don't talk about like, we have like fine water, that's helpful, but like making sure that we're also noting like, try and schedule this like during these times so that people have time for lunch. If you're expected to be there from 8 to 6 a.m., when are you taking your lunch? Where is your break period? And that's again another leadership point to make sure that you're scheduling those expected breaks, because while this recommendation is like industry standard is great, it also doesn't talk about lunch, dinner, breakfast. And that's not to say that you are expected to necessarily even give that because of understanding resources or the lack thereof, but it is to just put it in a conversation of reminding people to eat.
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially when we have a long, like a 10 out of 12 or something like that, making sure that those times are built into the schedule and not just expected to be found. Okay, Taylor and then Phil.
Food, equities rule is a straight 6 rehearsal. One of those rehearsal breaks must be 20 minutes for food. There are no longer 10 out of 12s for technical breaks with 2-hour dinner break for an 8 out of 10. Shift around some of the places of things. Make breaks consistent, should go in with the break timing
Yes.
and everything. And just general reorganization of like things together in the bullet points.
So clarifying, now the standard is 8 out of 10
8 out of
with
10,
a 2-hour break in the middle for meal break.
yes.
Fantastic.
And that can be shifted slightly, so it's a 5 and 3 or a 4 and 4, depending on when your time lands for when that meal break should theoretically be around a normal standard meal time of around noon or like 6 or 7, that kind of thing. No 1 o'clock, no like awkward 2:30 breaks.
Yeah.
For 2-hour breaks kind of deal. And then it is, if there is a 6-hour rehearsal or longer, a 20-minute break. For lunch.
Yep.
Is at least on the SPT, and I think the ITC, LORC contracts are different.
With walkthroughs should be done with all new spaces and things like that. May I suggest fire drills?
Yeah.
Tornado drills.
Fire and tornado, yeah.
And
I would say any emergency
Yeah.
drills, because we have active shooter situations and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Also need the security people, if that exists.
And then you guys familiarize yourself and your cast recruiter. Who's the you? Is it the director or the schedule maker?
The voice, although it might not be close to what it needs to be right now, the voice is intended to speak to the producers. So any you language is speaking to the production team, producers specifically, who hire people.
I wonder at the beginning of the document, should we specify that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're at time for a break actually now, I believe. Was there one more comment for?
There is one comment from Zoom, and it's a comment instead of a question, so I think we can get it in.
Yeah.
So from Kevin King, for intimacy blocking rehearsals, the only required personnel should be in, only the required personnel should be in the room.
Yeah.
Generally, this would be the actors directly involved in doing the intimacy and the director and the SM. And there should be a communicated plan for when partial nudity or nudity will be incorporated into the full rehearsals. These may be spelled out in the full document. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. We hope you all stick around, but it is a drop-in event. If you do have to go, we understand. Help yourself to snacks and all that. We'll be back very soon. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
And we're coming back now.
Thank you back. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so we're gonna move on now to workplace safety, which I will read aloud. Yes, okay, sir. Thank you very much, thank you very much. Workplace safety. There should be a general approach of respect and transparency coming from the top down, and this approach includes the adoption of basic safety requirements. Goals. This document is intended to plug the gap for workers not covered or protected by unions who deserve the same basic protections and assurances as union laborers. Tactics. Backstage conditions through the rehearsal to production process must comply with union standards. It is strongly encouraged that any changes to backstage conditions, on-stage conditions, set and property changes, etc., be reviewed with all appropriate parties in the production process. Production side staff must be in communication with any office staff facilitating the event at hand. Companies must be diligent in worker safety, responsive to concerns, and make a point to avoid hazardous conditions. Actions. Instruct and guide artists through every inch of the environment. Research and meet pay equity standards to ensure employees are paid fairly for comparable work. Adhere to public health and safety standards as outlined by the CDC. So right off the bat, I'll just say that we know this one's missing a lot. So any comments on this? Steph?
My first one is, I am very lucky because I know Taylor, so I can just text her things. But if there was some kind of resource that had like union standards, then I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
That's my
So either including the union standards information within this, or providing a direct guide to how to access that information.
yeah.
CDC?
Centers for Disease Control. So my question about CDC is that it is obviously far more fraught now to access CDC standards and guidelines because of the lack of information they are now able to provide. And I, with that in mind, am not sure. I wonder if it has been something where we rely on our local hospitals and medical facilities to get that information from, as we won't be getting updated COVID information from the CDC anymore.
Just to add on to that, things are being actively removed from the CDC website as well.
So,
What about our local health inspector?
yeah.
And then should OSHA be making visits as well?
That's a great question. I think I'm not sure what size of production requires OSHA oversight. We should look that up.
Yeah, we will.
I saw, was it Chaz's hand up or Marley's? Marley.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say that even leaning on like local hospitals might have some difficulties, just like if you kept up with the news or
Yeah.
I work in them. But I think that the health inspector or like the health department could be a really cool point of contact as well.
Yeah.
I was curious, this is kind of a different point, but when we were talking about like the emergency drills, I think that this would be more apt here than in the like previous section.
Yeah.
Or both, yeah.
Taylor.
I think within this, there can be a spot for suggestions on the technical side, such as rise and run of steps. There is a standard for architecture. There technically is not a standard in theater. There are suggested ones.
Right.
Of like 8 and 9 inch tall, but there's not really a depth as much. I think with lighting practices and stuff like that, with sound practices of it is not suggested to go over X decibel. I think there is a spot where there can be technical suggestions to maintain on stage and audience expectations as well.
Absolutely. So we're talking build, we're talking lights, we're talking sound.
Yeah.
House.
Just all of those kinds of things. For instance, a standard is having strobing light warnings, loud noise warnings, gunshot warnings, those kinds of things. But those are all still technically up to the company to follow and how much of that they want to do. There's not a technical standard as to how much of all that has to be brought out to the audience as well.
And I wonder if providing a section of examples like that in the full document might be helpful, so that if people have never considered putting those sorts of disclaimers or things on their side, then they at least have a thing to look through and go, oh, well, I've done that before, maybe in the future I'll include this.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot more examples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chad.
Yeah, because the example I was thinking of, especially like, as far as non-work play or non-union covered roles, I was thinking like child wranglers or animal wranglers in that position, and also maybe what rules or applications change, because if you have a child involved or several children involved.
Yeah, and I believe we have a section specifically on child actors.
Yeah, that'll be in our next forum. We'll talk about children's theater.
Yeah. Phil.
What's the organization that dictates the rise of ramps, of wheelchair ramps?
ADA.
ADA.
So that's another one.
And then, pitching on to what Taylor said, surely that there's things like that
specs and things like that for the theater. Would it not be wise to consult with a technical architectural consultant like David Peerbolt?
Find an architect that we could at least ask about, or an ADA, a person who specializes in ADA, so that we can just get like actual technical specs. But I wonder too if that was something we talked about at the last forum, having basically just like a place to access a bunch of information, not necessarily within this document, but just having it be like a sister partnership of having a place to have a lot of that information accessible to the theater community. Because at some point the document becomes unwieldy, right? Yeah. Coleman?
Exactly. There's no reason to write down the ADA's rules and OSHA rules and CDC rules and local health department rules when we can provide a link to those things, because those rules sometimes change. And so it's much better to go to the source than have us try to be the source for all that.
Yeah. Hey, was that your?
Yes, I have two things. One, equity has gotten away from ramps, just as a general rule to people in the room. Unless they are being used for entrances and exits, they are no longer a play space. The second thing, Peerbolt tends to be very expensive when you go to him to ask those kinds of questions. That costs really much. It's a lot of money. Dad knew him.
Just so you understand.
Yeah. But I think having a list of potentially people who understand certain rules like that and being able to go like, here are people that we suggest reaching out to, but having the standard of like stairs and platforms and things that almost every production or most productions deal with could be beneficial. But I think if you want to go into specifics, hand off to somebody else.
Yeah.
But like stairs, 9 inches tall by like a foot deep. That's a fairly standard stair size.
Right.
Having something like that in general may be beneficial, especially to people who are wanting to become producers and are starting to use this as a guide of some just general safety practices.
Absolutely. So general safety practices being an overarching. Okay, Marley?
Yeah, I had two things. Something along the lines of either you or designate someone who is your personnel in the case of an emergency, like have like a captain or something to that effect. And then I also thought for tactics, encouraging people to stay home when they're sick, understanding the human nature of passion, understanding the capital demand for us to be there, does not mean that you should put yourself through that. Again, being a leader that enforces and empowers boundaries, I think could be really beneficial as well. Also, with everything changing, it might be something to also continue to follow with like the sick leave specifically changes happening in Missouri currently.
Oh, that's right. That I believe is going into effect.
No,
Not
they
now yet.
repealed it, but then they had to put it back on the ballot, so that's why it's gonna change. Don't do anything necessarily, but it is something to just kind of track in case that does ever have implications in our work.
Because we voted that in, I believe, April. Was that just April? Or was that last August?
Last August.
That was last August. Okay, great. Because I knew it passed, but then you're saying it was repealed again, and now it's up for ballot again. Fantastic. And to think that I was dreaming of a world where I got more than 7 hours of paid leave a month. Okay.
Is that something that needs, sorry.
Yeah, no, chat, please.
Would that be something that we need to be a yearly or annual discussion about maybe what standards we are deciding upon? Because if the goalpost is gonna keep shifting,
right,
maybe we have to determine, we're gonna have to be the ones to determine annually if this feels like it meets the standards that we are seeking.
Yeah, that's a good point, and especially with us talking about this as being a living document.
Yes.
Coleman.
Well, I think there should always be a resources section that says follow your state and local guidelines. We can recommend some things, and that can be updated all the time, but there should always be a caveat that says check your state and local ordinances, please.
Any other thoughts on that section?
emergency procedure protocol sheet that talks about and having a list that is also discussed at first rehearsal with everyone in the room and is given to anyone as a part of on. This should include fire safety, shelter in place / tornado. It's fire safety, that one. Active shooter, and then there's one more. Can't remember, there's 4 of them that equity requires.
Earthquake.
Technically not required,
Why?
at least in the Kansas City area, because we don't
have many.
But yeah.
We
Yeah.
do.
I know
But
we have
having
a
a
couple
list
times
of and walking through as a part of onboarding for any person that joins a show should be discussed along with walking through and doing the fire procedures. I think having that in this section of a safety of here's what should be expected and also going, this is the person, medical emergency.
I was gonna say.
Medical emergency. In the case that someone's having a medical emergency, who is the person to call emergency services? Who is the person to go to such and such, and just having that clearly stated and available and that sort of thing, so that way there is a quick reference place.
Yeah.
I think, just speaking specifically to having that information readily available, I think there are so many instances where this information is discussed, like after first rehearsal, which is great, but then it just kind of like, all right, now we're moving on. So really make it clear, either, I know some stage managers have whole packets that they give to everyone in the production that they keep, that is theirs to keep with all of that information. If it's a QR code to a specific link with all the information, but really emphasizing making it easily available to everybody.
Chaz?
Yeah, for specificity, since a lot of rehearsal spaces might not be like a stage space or something like that, should there be a requirement of like a first aid medical kit always be provided by a stage manager or something like that, that at least one staff can provide a first aid kit on hand, at least for the initial treatment, if it further needs to be called or sent? That's a little bit more, price-wise, that's a little bit.
If a space has a defibrillator, you are required to have every front of house person trained to use said defibrillator as well as first aid in terms of CPR and everything like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, with the budget that most of our theaters are working on, that's gonna be a pretty prohibitive price point.
Yeah. And it is every 2 years you must up your training for that, and so that is why a good chunk of theaters have limitations on that.
Any other thoughts, feelings on this one? We're about out of time for this, is that correct?
No? All right, let's go ahead and move on then. We're gonna talk next about private/green rooms, led by Hafia.
Okay, section 9, private/green rooms. Respect for privacy is very important when preparing for / engaging in a performance. It is important to know how the space is sectioned off and what can reasonably be used as a green room. Goals: to provide private, safe spaces for artists to conduct work, change clothes, prepare for performances, use the restroom, breastfeed, or conduct any other intimate business as it pertains to the wellness of the production. Tactics: before moving into dressing rooms, the ensemble discusses expectations and boundaries. Set precedents for cleanliness. Check daily to keep stock of inventory and remove waste. Understand the different needs for different types of shows. Actions: designate a privacy curtain / enclosed private section for actors to dress. Assign individual artists to individual makeup and dressing spaces. Keep an inventory of necessary items to provide comfort and support to artists. Yeah. Anything you feel we're missing from this section, Taylor?
Dressing room assignments do not necessarily and should not necessarily fall within the binary. within that and everything. The other part that is somewhat missing from this is, again, the technical aspect of it. Where does the stage manager hang out to be able to call things? Just making a space available to them. And that could be anywhere, but just voicing that there should be a space for technicians.
Are you speaking specifically both on the side of where do our technicians live during performances as well as where are their private spaces? Both of those?
Yes.
Great.
Because backstage should also be a safe, and like there should be a designated area for the production assistant, run crew, all of that. There should be a space for them to sit,
Yes.
have water, that kind of thing.
Yep.
In between tasks, but also for if they don't want to be backstage the entire time, where can they go? That is a safe space for them to also be able to put like dinner,
Yep.
snacks, that kind of stuff.
The question I have about before moving into dressing rooms, ensemble discusses expectations and boundaries. With that, I like the idea of it being a communal discussion where rules are agreed upon. I find that with middle schoolers, that is the thing that works just as well, and we're all kind of 12 at some point in our lives. But I wonder too if having those rules and expectations, once they are decided upon, present in those private and green room areas so that they are easily referenced and not forgotten would be helpful. Yes, Marley.
We actually just got at work, I also do like youth education, and we just had a reframe of, instead of calling them expectations, literally just calling them agreements.
Agreements.
Yeah, having an agreement, you can do a community agreement or things like that. It just removes that part, like the assumption of, or like the power play as well of like, these are my expectations of you in this space, and it allows it to have that more iterative process with the community or people that you're serving. And you can have like examples there of like, we can all agree that if the curtain's closed, you should respect that, right? Like those types of things, but some of the agreements can be more specific based off of what comes out of that conversation.
My other question is in terms of checking for cleanliness, inventory, and waste removal. Is that something that I feel like we need to have specificity of who is responsible for that? Would that be the stage manager's job? Would that be the facility manager? Yep, Taylor, Stephanie.
So from where I'm sitting, it really depends on the space. So again, for rental situations, that's gonna be the facility's job, but there should also be someone checking up on that.
So maybe would it be including the phrase, make sure that within the team, there is an agreed upon person who does this task? Anything else? Taylor?
Within that there are regularly scheduled days that trash goes out. For instance, if we are cleaning out the refrigerator, you don't want to do it the day after the trash went out. You want to do it the night before the trash goes out. And that way it does help with everyone to remember, oh, right, I should throw things away on Wednesdays because trash goes out.
Marley?
It'd be cool to add a line, encourage recycling. If at all possible.
Yeah, it's difficult. I know I've worked in multiple places where either because of the city or other things, like for instance, my school district, the district decided they were no longer providing recycling.
I just threw it away.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I like the idea of encouraging it wherever possible. Okay. Other thoughts? Taylor.
I don't know if this is necessarily something to put within the document, but something to bring up within the ongoing session potentially, is under keep an inventory of necessary items to provide comfort to support artists. What are those items?
Yep.
And I think having within the group an idea of what those items are.
Yep.
I know in the was cough drops.
Yeah.
But once the bag of cough drops ran out, then it was game over, and they went out one time within the first week of a performance, on a 5-week performance week.
The community, right?
Because people were coughing them. And then the expectation was, well, we're out, it's like, we just got the Costco bag. You don't get more.
Right.
So, what is that expectation?
We have some examples in the larger.
Yeah.
In the larger point.
Perfect.
Cough drops is in there. We've got throat coat, tea, cough drops, emergency, ice packs, face masks, painkillers of whatever kind, Kleenex, bobby pins, mirrors, proper lighting, a coffee maker, water access.
Pads,
I
tampons.
was saying, do we have pads and tampons in there?
Yeah, the White Theater has a sort of community fridge, but also you can donate money for snacks and things like that. They ask basically, take something, leave $1 or a certain amount, change it up.
Well, that's right, there's always the, take a soda, leave $1.
Yeah,
I forgot about that. So another point where we just want to give more examples so that people have access to ideas for that rather than just coming up with them on their own. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Great.
A community writer of some kind.
Within that, suggestions are, but not limited to.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's examples, not an exhaustive
I think
list.
having that last little bit in there also helps set you all up for success.
I think there's a couple times we put that in there for things.
Marvin.
Yeah, I don't know if this needs to be documented necessarily, but something like, as an example of an agreement would be like respecting the resources to the point of like popping cough drops. Like, yes, there are some days where you do just have to knuckle down and get that done. But there are other days where it's like, oh, I just want a piece of candy.
Yeah, and again, this isn't a section that we won't talk about until the next forum, but in children's theater, I don't know, because I don't work in children's theater really at all, what the guidelines are around that, but I know at the middle school that I work at, I am not allowed to give any sort of medication to a child.
No.
So making sure then that if that is something that is provided for the cast, it is accessible to the adults and not to the children. So stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Everyone feel okay with that?
Agreed.
Fantastic.
All right, so our final section for today is understudies/covers/swings, which will be read by Karis.
Section 10, understudies, covers, swings. Understudies are a critical yet often overlooked part of a production. The goal is to clarify how understudies work, how to treat them, and what your responsibilities are to incorporate them into the production. Tactics are provide all materials necessary for the understudy to prepare, provide a work/rehearsal area for understudies during the rehearsal process, include them in other normal steps of the rehearsal process. The actions guarantee at least one run-through of for your understudy.
Taylor.
Before performing, understudies need to have at least one run through.
Okay, so instead of guarantee at least one run through,
Must.
must.
Before they take stage, they must. Change the language to it must be a thing. Because
Must.
you don't want someone to go on stage without any attempt at anything.
So must have at least one run through before performance for your understudy.
Yeah.
Great. I know that you and I came across that exact situation one year ago, almost to the day. Jazz.
Yeah, for the understudy work I did this year, there wasn't necessarily a clarification on the compensation that would be happening between being an understudy versus the actual performance. Because we had one actor that got sick right before the show started, and then that understudy became that part for the entire run of the show.
Great. So clarity of compensation with understudy duties, and if they become full-time.
Yes.
Great.
That should also be the actor's contract.
Yeah. Within actor's contract. Great. And Taylor, equity standard is there for that already, question mark?
I don't know. I don't know the understudy side as much as I do the other parts.
Great. Coleman.
not all theaters obviously use understudies or swings or covers. They probably should, especially these days now with COVID and some other things. However, it may be important for us to remember that not everybody knows how to do that.
Yes.
And what one run through means. Does that mean that the stage manager is there reading all the lines and the understudy just gets to walk through, or is that the whole cast, or are there restrictions on who's there and who's not there and how long you can rehearse the full cast during the run of a show when you're bringing in like many professionals have been through this and know this, but not every theater is going to know how to do the understudy thing. I'm not sure how specific we need to get in it, but it is important to note that there is some ambiguity in how you rehearse an understudy before they go on.
What if the understudy is understudy 2 or 3 roles?
Right.
Correct. There's a lot of, it's a complicated situation that you know some theaters know how to do, but I'm not going to assume that all theaters know how to manage that.
I wonder if including a clarity of contract section for understudies, how many roles are they expected to understudy for, stuff like that, even just a very basic run through of what they should know before going into the rehearsal process.
Yeah, I mean, understudy expectations are an interesting question. That can absolutely be taken advantage of by a producer that either doesn't know how it's normally done or is trusting that the understudies that they hired don't know how it's normally done and gives them every role or something and then just leaves them in the corner and hopes they figure it out. Yeah, there may be some work that needs to be done on this section that kind of clarifies best practices because, you know, it's not always possible to do best practice for every theater, but aiming for it is a good idea.
Yeah, definitely.
Similar to what you were saying, speaking with my community theater hat on, it is often difficult in those situations to even get full cast to be at all rehearsals, let alone understudies.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily have a specific question, but just an observance that this is definitely a very wiggly area.
And I wonder if what Pullman was saying about providing just an overview of best practices, that will not only help producers and directors get an idea for that, but also actors who maybe have not done that job before. So they know what to expect and how to also hold their own boundaries for what they're being asked to do.
Yes.
Any other things for this?
I'll just shout out Terrace for being the best thing in the world. The end.
Oh. That's what I was gonna say, understudies versus swings.
Yeah.
Yeah, make a distinction between understudies and swings. Okay.
Smaller town, not a lot of swings, but.
Cool.
Sweet.
Anything else? Yeah. Great.
I think open it up to general Q&A, is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone have anything that didn't necessarily fall in the parameters of what we talked about today? Now, granted, we may say we're going to talk about that at a next forum, but I know a lot of you weren't at our last forum, and we covered a lot of information there too. So, yeah, anything that just strikes you?
I just had a question because as we've been talking about this as a living document, is there somewhere where those changes are being implemented and published?
So that's, we're getting to that.
Okay.
We're not quite there yet, but we're planning to get to that within the next couple of months.
Cool.
Yes, absolutely. That's part of the process.
I have a question. Because I've been kind of dead to the world until we got back to school. I have been thinking about, I think what we talked about last time, a lot of needing to, I know we've been tentative about meeting with, theaters, like directors, executive producers, that kind of stuff. And I'm wondering if that is not something that we should try to do sooner rather than later. Because so much of the feedback that we're getting from you guys, which is amazing, is we don't necessarily have that executive producer lens as well. And having those, being able to get all of that, like the wider view, but also I think even more pertinently, I want to do more to reassure producers and directors that this is in no way a threat. We talked about that a lot last time, that this document is only a guideline that is accessible for everyone, and that if they choose to use it or adopt it, it is only an incentive for people to come to work with them. I don't want us to exist for so long without having those conversations that it then becomes something they don't want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'll be a big part of next year's outreach. Like this year is kind of this, the workshopping with community members. Now, of course, every theater company in town has heard from us at this point. I've emailed them, we've reached out to them in some way. We've heard back from a lot of these people too. Some community leaders are watching us on Zoom today or requested a link for today. But I think that's gonna be our major outreach initiative for next year, is then seeking out specific one-on-one conversations with these company owners, which would be like probably like 2 or 3 of the panel members, like not obviously, because we all know scheduling is just one of the hardest things about doing all of this,
Yeah.
Right? So, but yeah, that's going to be kind of one of our next big legs of this. So it's Freudian slip. It's having those direct conversations with these company leaders, because I know we are giving some people those. We're ruffling some feathers a little bit, and that's absolutely not what we're trying to do. We're trying to unite everyone. As hard as that concept seems like it is, that's our goal here. Yeah.
I think my perspective, because I do get the emails both as a community member and as someone who works for one of those theaters, I think sometimes the emails coming to the theaters and the theaters is a little off passive aggressive. That's probably not I know that's not the intention, but I think if there was more of an offering of, because producers are part of the community. Like obviously this is to protect as many people in the community as possible, but I think making it clear that this document will only benefit from the perspectives of those community actors rather than this is something we're showing you we have to do.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and I wonder too, I think that, because I see that side of it, absolutely. I also see the side of people feeling like they have not been listened to over and over by those people, and for those people to then say, well, why would I even care about this thing that just a couple of people in the community are trying to do? And so I think it's doing those things where it's instead of an email to a bunch of people, having that direct line of communication of saying, hey, these 3 people on the committee want to sit down and meet with you because we want your direct opinion of it. Because I can see how the sort of the impartiality or the all of us coming from it as a worker and not as a producer could end up feeling more passive aggressive. I also want, once I close my show in mid-October, if setting up those meetings is something that I can help with, Casey, I would love to volunteer my time to do that. But yeah, I guess so with your work, is that something where that has been your perception of it when you get those emails in, or is it something you've heard from your coworkers as well?
Yes.
Both. Fantastic. Yes, Marley.
I think it would be a cool opportunity also for outreach to bring in some specialists. So I was just telling, hey, I have a background in anti-sexual assault prevention work and things like that. So if you could get some a health expert that has a theater background, having those unique intersections of point of view or perspective can be hard to find, but there are people that you have in your Rolodex of just oh, that question I bet so-and-so has a thought on. It would be really cool to even just kind of get hey, this section we thought of you, can you provide some feedback that we can bring to you for whatever that process is? Because I think we're doing that now.
Yes.
Okay, now,
My proud of John.
I don't.
Is he not with that anymore?
I'm not sure if he wants to help.
He might not, but.
But
even
so his
still.
information might be slightly outdated in that case.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's absolutely part of the long-term plan too, is once we kind of get through the muddiness of this and just clarifying language and clarifying what this even needs to be, that's one thing long-term we absolutely want this initiative to do, is host those types of events with experts leading a panel. Okay.
When you said next year, approaching producers, are you talking 2026 or the 2026-2027
season?
No,
we're not really,
commercial?
we're not approaching this as a typical theater season kind of understanding, yeah, just the year calendar.
In the timeline of things, just trying to figure that out as someone who does sit on, again, both sides of the table right now.
Is there a lull period that would be ideal to try to set up meetings?
Yeah, that's an interesting
It
question.
depends on who you want to set the meetings up with.
True.
For instance, like MTH, their dark time is around the holidays because they base their season off of a calendar year now again. I know KCAT also has a very funky season. It's March to February.
It's May through September, and there's a huge break until March.
Yeah. So I mean, there's some funky stuff that if you look at the season catalogs, like I happen to know, don't talk to anyone at the Unicorn until after the first of the year. Dear Lord. But I mean, looking at the calendar and seeing each season and be like, hey, like also knowing Coterie, during the summer, they're crazy busy with a show and education department. Summer's not a good time for them. Summer's not a good time for Shakespeare. That kind of thing.
I would caveat, it depends on what staff members you're talking to also.
Yeah.
Because, again, during the summer coterie education, we're running around like crazy people. But once the show has opened, availability opens up for producers, directors, designers, once everything's open. So just, be mindful of those.
My thought is maybe then starting sometime in January, sending out a general message of like, we want to meet with you. We know that every single theater's schedule is different. Please let us know the best time during the course of the year that would work for you. So just opening it up to them telling us actually what their own boundaries are around that, rather than demanding like, we need to meet in March.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just being cognizant of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because everyone's so different.
Yeah. Just an addendum about Jeff Hirschberger. He has not been with the health department for 10 years.
Oh, wow, okay.
I've been with it for 10 years either, so.
Well, and that, Stephanie, you made me think of a question too, thinking about when it comes to these conversations that we want to have with these leadership teams. Like ideally, we're presenting this at a board meeting with all of the executive staff, right? That seems probably unrealistic to get the entire board in a place, right?
Additionally, when you're working with nonprofits, it's not just the staff, but then the board. And that is an entirely different group of people.
Yeah, and asking for them, for their teams to schedule like a huge group of people for us does not seem like something that we can realistically expect people to get down with.
And sometimes board meetings are now Zoom meetings too, so that can be possible. Often that way.
Yeah, I think it's ideal if we can get in person with people.
Yeah.
Yes, for this at least, right? Like the first round of it. But
I know some people are doing hybrids like this, so.
yeah.
It may be worth when you, depending on which theater companies you are going for, asking to meet with both the producer, artistic director, executive producer, maybe also meeting if they have a board, meet with their board president at the same time. They're managing marketing, like some other director, having it where it's have 3 people from your side and we'll bring 3 people from our side so we can have a smaller discussion between just us. And that way it's not just 3 to 1. And that way there is a little bit on that side and you see their side a little bit before going into the big, trying to get into the big board meetings or having a big board.
Yeah.
mean, I think that's best practice. I think it's gonna be hard enough to get meetings, and it'll be kind of like, we'd love to come talk to you. What time do you have and who can you put in the room?
Yeah.
And I think that is okay too. I don't think we need to dictate too much other than suggest, here's what we can bring. Here's who we'd love to talk to.
Also coffee always helps.
And donuts.
Yeah, I had a question, if there was any other thoughts on that though. Okay, I had a couple of questions since I wasn't at the previous session, if you could maybe speak to those, I know that this is a document that's available, or, things like that. One question that did just pop into my brain is also if there's any sections talking about like content warnings, trigger warnings, or things like that. I don't know if it necessitates the whole thing, but I have lots of hot takes on those things.
That came up earlier today, in terms of audition postings.
Gotcha.
I believe we talk about it in another section as well.
It's definitely something
As far
that-
as content warnings of the show for audience as well, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember if that was last forum or if it will be coming up in the next one that we discuss it.
Hard for us to remember because we look at the document all the time. But it is there.
Yeah. If not, it will be clarified because that's been really important to us. Anything else? No, fantastic.
Thanks for organizing this.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for coming. So yeah, just to give you, if anything else does come up later on, please refer to those feedback forms. Those are really helpful for us. That helps us keep track of any notes, anything that if later today you're like, oh, I didn't think about this then, but now I've thought of it now. There's resource QR codes there that you can just click and send us any little notes or anything's helpful. If anyone is willing to stay to take a picture, we like to take a picture, a group picture to show good face on the socials and all that. And
Sorry, do we have a timeline of when the next one might be?
no, we're trying to do one per season, so look out for it in the winter.
Cool.
Yeah, again, scheduling is always the thing, right? So
Yeah,
keep an eye out for the winter. Didn't we originally, were we like July, obviously, and then I think all died.
Yeah.
We all, yeah. Not smart, yeah, not smart, yeah, but at this point, we did one in the spring, and now it's our summer one, so look out
Cool.
for it. Well, I guess that was fall. Fallish winter.
Fall winter. Love it.
Yeah, fall winter, yeah.
It's gonna be on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Everyone pick a side.
Well, yeah, again, thank you so much, everyone, we really appreciate it.